Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in for another exciting ConLostCast. We're here today with Connor Locke Warburton.
Nailed it. Yep.
Jacob McKee Wright.
Hello!
What is with having two people here who have like two last names each?
Hyphenated. It's one last name.
Hypheners.
We
don't have middle names.
Yes, and Will Craft.
Hey!
We can call you Will Craft Wright if you like. You can have a hyphen.
No, I don't know.
And
I'll be right.
I'm Brenton Hamilton. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Today we are going to talk about kind of how do you get into the game industry? I know for a long while, I've had friends, family, and so on and so forth who've been very interested in kind of making games. And I know growing up that the game industry was kind of this mysterious thing. I kind of understood games just kind of coming out of the nothingness of programmers somewhere. And so, nowadays with the game industry expanding and schools and various other methods for entry kind of cropping up, we figured now's a better time than any to kind of talk about getting into the industry. So kind of starting things off, just a brief overview. Today we're going to be talking about game schools and various methods through education that you can get into the industry. We will also touch on, breaking into the QA or the quality assurance side of the game industry, as well as just indie game development and kind of gathering a bunch of friends together and brute forcing your way into things. So to start things off, game schools. I understand everyone here at the table has experience kind of at multiple schools, and all of us have a handful of education experience.
Yeah.
So going around the table, why don't everybody talk about kind of what your education has entailed thus far? I know all of us have a very diverse background. Connor, go and start us off.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I'm very much the programmer side of stuff. So I did half a course of Bachelor of Computer Science involving games technology at a standard university in Australia. It's not bad. I'm currently at AIE. In fact, most of us are, I think, at the moment.
And Jacob?
I started in primary school.
Impressive.
Yeah. And
I just skipped all of that. Went straight to college.
oh, lucky you. I graduated, went to high school, and now I make games. No. Not yet. So I did an advanced diploma of fine arts, and then I did a bachelor degree of visual arts, object art, and design. So I actually came from a very traditional and contemporary art background, not a game art background.
Myself, I went through high school, did a few things in there involving games, and then I did a diploma in interactive digital media, which entailed like a lot of video editing and a lot of we made a game during that and a lot of web design. And I didn't really learn all that much, and now I'm here at this new college, and it's great.
AIE, the Academy of Interactive Entertainment, is I believe where all of us are at.
Yes, the Ultimo campus.
Yes.
Because they're all over the place.
Over in Sydney. Yeah.
And in Seattle as well.
Yes, and so myself, as opposed to these Australians, after graduating high school, I attended a school in Chicago called the Tribeca Flashpoint Academy, a small 2-year program who I believe is now expanded out to 4 years. But during my time there, I focused in game design, and through the course there, I got I believe it was an associate's degree in game design or game development. Yes. And so anyway, I've come out to Australia and I've done the design path, so now I'm doing the programming path. But yes, so all of us have a very diverse kind of background in education and in schools in general. So I know there's some good videos and some good talks about this online, and we'll put some links down in the Doobly-Doo that we highly recommend you check out. But it pretty much breaks down education, if you're looking to get into the industry, into kind of one of 3 different baskets. There's traditional schools that are much more along the lines of, liberal arts or computer science and some of these other degrees.
Which is what my old degree used to be. I think it was mostly, they were more used to traditional, all right, you get your computer science if you want to get into computers in general. It was very much an academic sort of course rather than anything else.
Which is perfectly valid. It just means you have to do a lot of extra work outside to make games. Because making games is what gets you to make games.
Yes. And so we'll kind of go into the pros and cons and path of that momentarily, but there's also kind of exploitative schools that have kind of cropped up as more and more games are kind of becoming a role for a lot of students coming out of high school. Parents don't exactly know how to what schools they should be looking for. So they don't exactly, like, they know how to flesh out like a regular university. They know how to tell when one is legit. When there's a lot of schools these days that have kind of come up out of nowhere that claim to, oh, play your games here, or you can sell your game ideas here, and they teach you how to do that, when those are purely exploitative. And kind of dissecting those from the third option, the truly legitimate game schools, can be difficult at times, especially for those of the older generation who don't exactly know what to look for. So I guess starting at the top of the list, kind of, let's just start off with traditional schools. I'm a strong believer that they can be a kind of a great foundation in the sense that they cover a very wide array of subjects.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree. I think I didn't so much like it because it was that academic sort of view. But in saying that, it did actually teach me how to teach myself, I guess. Mm-hmm. I think they do give you a good solid basics in whatever they chose fit. I think I mostly learned C++ and a whole bunch of design structures around code. But it wasn't particularly that. It wasn't very much project based like we're more used to. Like in games, everything is pretty much project based. But the way I was learning it was kind of here, have a lot of information. Try and teach yourself whatever you can from there, and literally figure it out yourself. And that could be good for some people, but essentially, I don't know.
For this kind of mediums. Or this kind of medium, I don't necessarily see this as one that you can truly learn if you're sitting in front of a lecture hall the entire time. Traditional schools, there are a handful of courses therein that are very good, and they do have very positive teachers in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, my school is Sydney College of the Arts, so it's very much a contemporary arts school, and I found it extremely useful. I don't think I didn't learn how to animate, I didn't learn how to draw or make anything particular. I got to pick, very specific medium paths I wanted to take. I specifically did glass blowing for a number of years. But I thought it was a fantastic school for reinforcing contemporary thought, which was a massive thing. And I found that very useful, where, we got taught like, concepts and principles of design and kind of fine art concepts and color theory and stuff like this. That was transferable within all design.
And so I've been to two different game school now. It's like true through and through game schools. And it seems that kind of throughout the way, none of these schools that I've seen the art courses of, they don't touch on color theory or, necessarily design and some of that kind of understanding of art. They mainly focus on, the use of the tools, the debugging of those, and then just kind of the industry standards.
I feel like that might be because you were doing particularly game design rather than game art.
Well, no, I did.
Oh, you did?
Game art at the other school.
I didn't even know that. Because, we've, at AIE, we've been through color theory for a few lessons.
No, we haven't.
We haven't?
Not
extensively, not as a...
We have touched on it extremely briefly.
Yeah.
We had a summary over a period of 2 days on what color theory was about.
Didn't think that was brief, but okay.
There are, 6-month courses on color theory.
Okay. Well...
Yeah, it was a crash course.
At my previous TAFE, when I did my course, we also did some color theory in there. Even though it wasn't really a course about that, it was, it was more about aesthetics in design and certain editing techniques and colors that bring out your work. So
we'll drop. I'm going to drop a link below on a little tool online called Paletron, which specifically is basically a color palette creator, which I recommend anyone that is interested in art or game art or anything, jump online and have a screw around with color palettes. It's a good thing to set out before you start a game, because you say, these are the colors that repeat through the entire game, and you keep continuity that way.
Yes. So I think two other things that come to mind are, some of these larger traditional universities. I think there's something nice about kind of the social aspect of being in a massive university and having access to a ton of other like-minded people who may not necessarily be interested in games, but are interested in arts, and to be able to cross-reference those. There's a book that I call it my design Bible, but it's called The Art of Game Design, a Book of Lenses, and it's by a designer by the name of Jesse Schell. and I'll put a link down in the Doobly-Doo, but he is a phenomenal designer because his background is not in game design. He takes from so many walks of life. Like in his book, he touches a lot on like things he learned about game design by watching ballet and like talking to ballet artists and dancers and stuff, and all these other aspects of like roller coaster design. He learned so much about game design through the course of kind of theme park layouts and design.
I've noticed one thing I've noticed with game design itself. It's not just you just learn game design in games. You learn design as pretty much everything. That you start seeing patterns in just people's behaviors or literally psychology. There's a whole bunch of psychology involved with game design. That's really fascinating that you wouldn't think was there unless you actually researched it or looked it up yourself.
Yeah, and that's one thing that if I had the option to continue going to school and could go to a traditional school, that's something that I would definitely love to do. Take a course of just liberal arts and take a ton of time studying psychology on the side, not in its application to games, but just learning how the human mind works. That way, on my own time, I can find out how that plays into games, and that's definitely something that at a game school, like back at my old school, we touched on game design and we went over the psychology of games and stuff. But as you said, same kind of thing with the color theory. It was very much a crash course.
So it was more applicable skills rather than great big sort of subject in general.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some amazing fields you can actually branch out into color theory, like color chemistry and such. There's whole degrees.
Yeah. Okay, so I think kind of the thing to take away from traditional schools are if you're a programmer, you can get away just fine doing a computer science degree.
I think programming, it's universal. I think you can be a games programmer if you really want. You can also make very good money doing banking software. You can make good money making tools, making simulations sort of stuff. It's sort of everyone needs some kind of coder at a single point, and if you make something that's incredibly cool tool-wise that is useful and people can use, you'll make millions.
Yeah. I think if you're a designer, going to a traditional school for like liberal arts degree or a psychology degree, that is infinitely useful. While if you're an artist, kind of going for a fine arts or a liberal arts can definitely have its application.
I found it helped, and it's helped tremendously. Like, it's invaluable, those degrees to me, and just the experiences anyway. Go to art school, have fun. But game school specifically has been amazing in not just teaching me the programs I need to make games, so getting into game engines, getting into the Autodesk suite, getting into all those expanded little things, like using Quixel and stuff like this, but the rate at which they push you to produce games and game assets and stuff like this. You can bum around for, half a year on Maya and try and pick up yourself and troll the forums and stuff and do your best, and you'll probably do pretty good. You'll probably learn quite a bit of Maya or quite a bit of Blender or whatever you're going to have a crack at. But if you go to a game school, I guarantee that 6 months that you spent learning by yourself, you will do in probably 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's actually something I'd like to mention. The previous course to this one, I did learn, we spent an entire module on using Maya. I learned how to model a cat and render it out using, and I modeled a room and I didn't texture it or anything, but I learned how to use Maya. I eclipsed my knowledge in Maya in the first week of going to a game school. It was,
and same thing happened to me. I think 2-year course, I learned pretty much everything that they taught me in the previous course in about 2 years, now in about maybe 6 months or even less than that.
Yeah.
I think, I was relearning a whole bunch of stuff, but it was very much...
So...
It was, made concrete, I guess.
So I think this is a good segue into kind of talking on our next topic, which is game schools. And I think, there's a very clear line between exploitative game schools that just seek to, accept anyone who's got the money versus those that, are truly trying to create some new people to fill the industry.
I mean, a nice line you can look for is non-for-profit schools.
Yeah.
Not that that's a definitive thing by any means.
And I think it's very interesting because the old school I went to in Chicago is a for-profit school. Halfway, when we were 1 year through, the video that we're linking down in the Doobly-Doo from Extra Credits came out, and there was a big sit-down with everybody, and the entire class watched it. and the video basically, or the entire student body was like, hey, you guys kind of hit a lot of these negative points, and the administration and the teachers there were like, okay, we understand your concerns, but here's how we are going to improve / here is where we have debunked a few of those, and this is how we don't fit that. And so it was a very interesting communication between the students. But so I guess to start things off, there are a lot of schools these days that do seek to just purely take advantage of students. And in that regard, there are a few warning flags that you should definitely, that should come up when you're looking at these schools. If they are for profit, if they promise to let you play games.
Yeah, that one's a big red flag. I think when I first started looking to go to universities, I went to a couple of schools that advertised that, you'll get to make and play your own games, but they very much specified that, you get to play games all day. It's just, wait.
Hang on a second.
Okay.
And that's a good thing. A good thing to mention, just because you like playing games doesn't mean you like making games.
Oh, yes, it is a very different craft.
Yeah.
Very different will craft.
It is very much a different mindset from being a developer to being a gamer. And
so any school that promises to say, hey, if you have game ideas, we'll help you make a job out of that. There is no job in the industry where your ideas are worth a damn thing unless you are way high up in the industry. Like, in this industry, ideas are almost worthless by themselves.
Ideas are nothing. You gotta do something with them.
Everybody and their dog has a game idea. If you want a job selling game ideas, then this is not the industry for you.
No, you've got to be able to make that game yourself if you want to make it, and then show someone, hey, look, I made a game.
Yes.
Then they actually care.
Yes. So a few things to note about these exploitative schools. They usually tend to target students that have kind of lower grades in high school. They are very much of the mindset, oh, don't worry, we understand, you aren't meant for the traditional setting. Come in here and we'll help you achieve your dreams through these games. There's not any homework, or there's not this or that. There aren't exams or tests or anything. That should immediately kind of raise some warning flags, because they tend to usually pretty much just accept anyone who has the money to pay.
Yep.
Another thing to kind of look for are these schools that are barely accredited. I know the school I went to, when I applied and when I got enrolled, they were not accredited. And they were like, oh, well, here, by the time you guys graduate, we'll be accredited. And so I came around to graduate, and they weren't accredited yet. And so they had just kind of, whether they lied to us or they they underestimated the amounts of time. A lot of these exploitative schools, they are unaccredited, and Extra Credits points out there's a very strong difference between regional accreditation and national accreditation, which I can't speak for the Australia kind of sector, but I know out in the States, for you guys back in the States, it is much easier for a school to achieve national accreditation than it is for them to achieve regional accreditation, which seems a little counterintuitive. So at least check to see if the school you're looking for has national accreditation.
But that said, I think in Australia, to my knowledge, we don't have a particular sign of accreditation, but being a university or a teaching place, in itself, you do need obscene amounts of paperwork and actual, almost accreditation, but government approval to actually start teaching people.
We don't really have unaccredited schools in Australia. It's more along the lines of, if you've got a school, that means you've got government funding, and you've got and you've got a HEC system in place, hopefully, and.
So two last little bullet points here for kind of things to worry about exploitative schools. You'll notice that if they recommend at all, or if they say at all that, hey, the credits here don't transfer, that should be immediately a little weird, and that usually comes with being unaccredited. And on top of that, if they have bounty hunters or people who are paid to go out and recruit students, that immediately seems like a sketchy practice, because I think a good school should be able to speak for itself and should naturally draw the attention of students.
It's also a good warning sign if they can do it too quickly, the course. Like, I've looked at a lot of courses in Sydney, and, some of them were like, yeah, we can give you an accelerated course and you can be done in a year.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not going to become you're not going to learn Maya in a year.
You just can't.
Well, and so my old school, there was very much of the mindset, hey, 2 years and you can become a game developer. In fact, that's what AIE is selling, right?
Yes, it is what it's selling.
And so, after doing the 2 years, I attempted to get into the industry. And in some ways I was successful, but I wasn't able to find full-time employment at a major studio. And so that's what caused me to return to school, aka AIE. And so I think that is absolutely the right choice. Or even if you are going to a TAFE and or a university for other things before and after that education, I think you want at least 3 to 4 years of education, learning your craft and etc. before you can dive into the industry safely.
And it just doesn't have to be one huge course. I think you can get huge bachelor degrees that eventually lead on to
PhDs.
PhDs. I think old school there was a person that was studying AI, and it was very much coming from his original Bachelor of Computer Science Game Technology. So
yes, so right now we've covered traditional games, we've covered exploitative schools, but we haven't necessarily told you what exactly you want to be looking for. So first off, when you're looking into game schools, a lot of schools that are legitimate will proudly boast that, hey, we have a certain hiring ratio, excluding QA. On top of that, most of these schools that are well established, although it's a little preferential to those that have been around for more time, they tend to have rewards and accolades, and there are places where you can look at student work, as a lot of the websites for these schools will post the best of the best work being put out, and that's a good indicator of what you can expect to get out of that if you were
Not to
going
mention,
into
you
school.
should have access to all the teachers' names, and if you can Google them and find the games they've made, or the films they've made, or etc., etc.
Do so, yeah. If you Google your teacher and they don't come up in Google, there might be something wrong. They're probably not worth listening to.
It's always a good thing to look for teachers at schools that have not just had industry experience, but continuing in the industry. Reality is, they're going to be your only contact when you start out. The only person you're going to know that can, give you a recommendation or something will probably be your lecturer. So maybe they've worked on a game, or maybe they are working on a game that's been a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, as we previously alluded to, a lot of these major, like the good game schools, they tend to almost primarily be just project work. Like, yes, they have lectures, but there are at least 2 to 3 kind of big projects that they expect students to clump up to.
They aim to get students to create their own projects. So by the end of the course, they'll have, hey, this is a thing I made, and also another thing, and also another thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I've noticed is we're constantly being told during this course is it's not what you... It's only a 2-year course, so we're not exactly guaranteed a job in the industry afterwards, but it's what we make of the time during the course, during doing our own projects, constantly networking. Networking is a big thing that's encouraged at AIE. They constantly hold networking nights, and it's really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the primary reason I returned to school out here in Australia, was to make the contacts with the people who would soon be in the industry over the course of the next few years, because those are the people that you'll be working next to and will be hiring you, and you will be hiring. So they are the best people to know, your would-be peers.
So I think a really good kind of spot to finish up schools on is go interview the schools you're interested in. Figure out what you actually, want to get out of games. Like, actually do a bit of research and say, oh, I really want to make characters. I know I like making characters. I don't know how I can make characters, but I know that's what I want to do. Go ask a school how you learn that, and ask how they help you achieve that. Then go to the next school and interview them. What have you got to offer me? They'll take you in. In the end, they're gonna ask portfolio, but at the same time, you've got just as much right to interview the school and say, what facilities do you have? What licenses do you have to different programs? Am I going to have access to industry professionals? Am I going to have access to going and doing meeting and greets with companies? Or
Yes. Absolutely.
And if the game school is worth their salt, they would be happy to literally take you in at any point. I think I've seen a couple of people come into our school just off the street because they were just curious about our school. And they sort of either got a teacher or that was not busy, or they had just a guy just to interview them and just tell them all about the school.
we have someone at our school specifically for talking to students about their queries.
Yeah, and it's completely free, and you're not losing anything from not doing it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so moving forward, we've kind of touched on game schools and what they can provide, and I definitely think that's the path that we all have chosen. But at the same time, I have several friends back in the States who have gone purely through quality assurance testing and kind of the path that QA leads them. Quick note, for QA testing, this is not a path I recommend if you plan on getting into programming or the art side of things. It's purely for design/production. And production, I mean like producer, so that's almost the managerial or the cat herding side of the team.
But that said, I think you can, I guess, come from QA positions, but it is very rare. So you do hear those cases where, no, I was just really interested in coding. I happen to get good at it by QA testing and sometimes starting to fix the developer's code. And then they started noticing and said, hey, you're pretty good. You should totally work on your own stuff.
Don't bet on it.
Yes.
Often the QA testers are hired out of the game school as well anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I personally am very against. I don't think it's right to, here's all this education I've done, look at all these skills I have, and then get hired to do the grinding, backbreaking work that anybody off the street can pretty much do if with the right training. Yeah. And it really, you can be trained to be a QA tester. And for those of you who don't know, QA testing is a very grueling, backbreaking experience.
Yep. Do the same thing in the game 10 times in 10 different ways, as many times you can. If it goes wrong, write it down, keep on doing it to
run into every wall in this level and see if you can slip out.
It'll make you hate the game. You're not going to enjoy playing games. You're not going to go home and say, well, that was really fun quality testing the new Halo. That was amazing. All I did all day was stay in the first sixth of the first level trying to run into rocks.
At the same time, while we make it sound very like a poor experience, it is it plays a very vital role in the industry. And for many people, it is a very good way to get into the industry.
Oh, yes. I'm just highlighting that if you want to create character art,
that's not how you do it.
It's the wrong way to go. And that's probably why I have a bias, because I want to create characters and levels and things like that. I don't...
It's also a very silly way of going about entering the game industry, especially if you don't know much about the industry itself. Like, as a kid, you'd be like, I want to be a game tester so I can play games all day. No. Boring.
Yes, and there's all sorts of ethical issues that kind of come up and exist in that side of the industry.
Yeah, I think for a form of reference, I think the Penny Arcade do a sub website called In the Trenches.
In the Trenches.
There you go. Yeah, no, I think they have a comic, and then below it they have stories that people write in from their experiences being in the game industry.
Yeah.
8 out of 10 of them are QA people that have had horrible time. But that said, there do exist good stories of people that have had really good experiences just being a QA tester. And
so it's definitely a way into the industry. However, it is a very rough road, and you very much start at the very bottom of the totem pole. Unless anyone else has anything else to add to the QA side of things.
Well, perhaps, I know it raises a good point that if you want to be a coder, theoretically you should actually code. In the same way that if you want to do character development and all that sort of stuff, you should attempt to do character art. You don't start doing programming and say, yeah, I'll do programming, but first I want to do sound engineering. I don't know sound engineering, but I'm sure I'll work my way through it. It's almost in the same way of QA testing that, you can go into QA testing, but...
And there are some people who their entire career is solely inside QA testing. And you can move up the ladder and eventually be the kind of liaison between testers and designers. And that is definitely a role.
Don't wait till you get to school. Start making all your stuff now.
Yes. And that kind of moves on to the next point, which is the third and final way to get into the game industry is to do it. To make it.
I'm going to ask everyone in this section to actually read off some of the programs you've used. Brett, names of design, Connor, programming. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to go about it.
All right. Yeah.
What languages?
Yes, so on the game design side of things, I think the primary role of a designer is to be able to express the idea and the concept that they're trying to tell the team in a very clear and concise way. And so the tools that I use specifically and have been using over the years have been mainly Illustrator and Photoshop in order to kind of portray a scene or a mechanic in a 2D snapshot, almost to make mock-up screenshots in a way. But outside that, in terms of like the design documents and the number crunching and all that stuff. I use a lot of Excel and Word, and those are almost where I spend the most of my time is in Excel.
Oh yeah, Brett's got me into Excel recently.
Oh god.
Oh, it is so addictive. As soon as you learn how to just do all these cross functions and have loads of different sheets going at once,
you can crunch numbers and
It's not that addictive. You have to be a special kind of person.
yeah. So here's an example of one thing I did.
I like Excel.
Yeah.
yeah.
You're the only one who doesn't, Will.
Well, that makes me a minority here.
Good. And the minority is elsewhere. So, moving forward, I think an example of the way I got really good at Excel was I went out of my way to take a game I admired, such as Warcraft 3, and I number crunched all of the units in the game, put them all their scores into an Excel sheet, and crunched the numbers to find out mathematically which the most powerful units were for the cost of them. And then when I played the game, I mean, I did it for the purposes of design, but also to kind of be better at the game because there are certain minor flaws. But anyway, outside that, I'm pretty sure that everyone can agree with this, and this is just good game developer tools to begin with. Unity is a very powerful kind of open. Is it an open source?
It's not open source, but it's just you can get a free version of it.
Very easy to obtain.
Yeah.
It's something up to you can make up to $25,000 on it.
You can make a good amount of money. So basically,
200.
Unity, for those who don't know, is a powerful game development tool that's used by a lot of industry professionals to basically create games. It is where you do a handful of the coding, a handful of the scripting, handful of the art, and you push it all together, and that is where the game engine kind of comes from.
It's a rapid prototype. I've seen a lot of people
Yeah.
call it. You can use it professionally, and a lot of people do use it professionally.
Yes.
But because it is made to be so user-friendly and user-orientated, it doesn't have a lot of the grunt power that a more powerful engine would have. So the most recent UE4, or Unreal Engine 4, it has a great base of huge amounts of shaders and just incredible sort of tessellation sort of stuff that Unity just doesn't have because it's just younger.
Although, if you are interested in paying, Unity does have those things. You just need to go through the store and purchase them.
Unity Pro
Yes.
or just Unity add-ons.
Yeah.
In saying that as well, a lot of studios you'll get to, I think more specifically in film, but often in game as well, you'll have the game company, the development, will go through the process of making their own engine.
Yes, and that is seen more often than not. But I think for the indie developer or the person trying to make a break into the industry,
Or just make your own, just little toys. I
yeah.
guess.
Well, I think Unity and Unreal are a great way to show the industry and other developers that, hey, I can work using your preliminary engines because I had picked up and learned this other engine. And while this one's been built to kind of assist me in that, it shows that I have the capacity to learn development kits.
It also means a designer or a artist can make a game in Unity with limited code knowledge.
Yeah,
Yes.
you guys technically don't need me. I think there's a couple of
We need you,
scripts.
Connor.
We definitely
We need you so much.
Oh, you've got your Playmaker script you can use.
I need that ass.
I think there is a plugin for you. There's a plugin for Unity you can use that is very much drag and drop programming, and that's very much what a lot of people use to just learn the very basic sort of stuff.
Once again, that is Playmaker, a visual scripter.
Yes.
Get yourself a copy.
You can make your own Flappy Bird clone.
You can make 5, in fact. But I think generally code-wise as well, Unity is great in terms of the scripting engine. There are so many tutorials. I think Unity has created a huge, vast array of tutorials, video and actual text format you can use. And I've gone through them. They're pretty damn extensive. But in terms of getting the good fundamentals of programming, that if you really want to get into a AAA studio, you're going to need to learn their in-house coding script. And so the idea of coding, being a good programmer, is that you're able to learn these coding languages very quickly. So you do get a good base of C++ and C# and maybe a little bit of Java. If you get particularly fancy, you can do assembly code, like I did. Nobody uses anymore, but it's just fun to use. So getting a good base through those sort of engines, I think typically I've used Microsoft Visual Studio I think they have an Elements, which is a free version for students.
Yeah.
There are so many compilers for C++, and again, look it up on YouTube. The first thing you'd look up on would probably just teach you Hello World. And that's pretty much every single coder will make Hello World at some point.
There's a PDF book I'll link down the bottom, which is Learn C++ in an hour a day. And it's a very good book.
Yeah, and once you have those fundamentals, I think every data structure is pretty much, they're transferable across pretty much every single coding languages. There's always going to be if statements, for loops. There's going to be data structures that are good and weird and better in certain languages, but they're just going to be constant.
For those that are going into programming, like one thing that I had not necessarily thought about that I wish I had been of the same mindset when I got into programming was learning programming is very much, you're learning another language, like literally I may as well be learning Spanish, while doing hardcore mathematics and having to really push the extent of my logic.
Actually, that's a good point. Yeah, learn maths. Period.
Yes.
It is so useful. Every single chunk of coding I've ever done, I've used a little bit of either logic, I've used... so the stuff you teach, no one said, no one's ever going to use trigonometry ever. We use it on a daily basis.
Yes, and that's one thing that, back in high school, I didn't do a handful of those math classes.
Yeah.
And while I can, to a certain degree, run with the bulls, me not having that foundation in math has definitely made my job a lot more difficult when I get into coding.
Yeah, most certainly.
I'm guessing you guys would even get into complex mathematics. You'd probably go into vector charting.
We do indeed. I think
Matrix mathematics.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we use that regularly. And my old university, half the course was programming, the other half was literally almost learning a mathematics degree. I think we learned discrete mathematics, all sorts of stuff like that. That was, you get to know roughly how a computer works. So if you're curious, look up, I think, modular tables? Modular tables. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the very old school way that they used to, that they didn't have calculators, they'll just go to these tables and look up numbers and everything.
It'll be a wiki link in the Doobly-Doo.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like it. But I think
it is interesting.
Cool.
It's one of those funny things where, like, I don't know, I found the part that killed maths for me was examinations. So when you can actually just go off on your own and just learn mathematic principles.
Math is actually fun, but the thing is, we're often taught from a young age that it's
grueling.
It's grueling. No, it's not. Once you learn the basics of it and you actually apply it like we do.
I think the application is the important part, because without application, math wasn't worth my time. But now that it's gotten to the point where, trigonometry is actually useful, I'm kind of picking up little bits and pieces of it from around the classroom.
Yeah. Math is the only thing, guys, you'll ever find definite answers in life. Everything else has variables.
Well, some math. Most math.
A little bit.
Any math that has the stage where it becomes like world variables is now physics. I don't care what you say.
Yeah, true. And physics do play an important part with mathematics stuff as well.
Yeah. But if we're going to talk from the game side, doing game art, Will and I can both talk about this.
Yeah, it's a very useful program. The main one being Maya or 3ds Max. Your 3D sort of tools.
Quick side note, while these guys are going to talk a little bit more in depth about those, as a designer, learning Maya is absolutely valuable. Being able to gray box a level in Maya and drop it into UDK, that just makes things so much easier. Or whatever engine you're using.
One of the first things we learned was gray boxing.
Yeah.
But Maya is really essential. If you're going into game, the industry is quickly moving into pretty much 3D. It is going back to 2D. But Maya is...
So Maya is a 3D production and animation suite where you can do from basic block building or polygon primitive building, develop complex models and shapes, and then you can also rig them, so that means give them a skeleton, and then from that you can also animate them within it. So it is a full animation and 3D production suite. You can do different rendering in it, so that means basically calculating lighting and surfaces to get final, very lustrous, beautiful final products, I guess. Within the suite, you can also do simulation. So there's things called end cloth and such. So it'll work out how a piece of chiffon lace falls with, twice Earth gravity. You can set all these values up. But specifically, sometimes it's easier to, if you're going to model a tablecloth, just grab a piece of N cloth and just drop it on a table that you've modeled. And you have a physically realistic cloth.
Yeah.
I think that's how I'd explain Maya. Do you want to say? You got anything?
No, I was going to expand onto other programs for refining the models you make in Maya, like ZBrush, or ZBrush, as most of the world calls it. It's a really great sculpting program that you can use with like a stylus or a Wacom or tablet, a drawing tablet, to sculpt literally like a piece of clay the model you've just made in Maya, to add detail and even paint on textures to finish off your model. You can get some really great results and render it out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful program. If you're wondering, wait, so you're sculpting in two different programs, the best way to highlight that would be Maya is digital block building. You create it incrementally and you slowly carve off corners until you get, it's an additive process. It's you're starting with primitive shapes. ZBrush and another program called Mudbox are much more like digital clay. You're given a blob that you're going to just push and pull into. It's much more organic. When you start getting into 3D stuff, you'll understand that Mudbox and ZBrush, it would be called high poly sculpting, where you have millions of polys sometimes. So millions.
Poly means polygon, by the way.
Yes. You have millions of polygons sometimes, or sometimes they calculate differently. They might calculate as points, depending on the program.
Or tries.
Or there's many different ways it calculates and works out. And it's very much about having fluid edges and fluid sculpting.
And then, as I kind of mentioned in design, I think also Unity and Photoshop are incredible. You need to know those if you're getting into art.
Yes, I've seen
Photoshop is definitely probably after Maya, Photoshop is the tool we use probably the most.
I agree, yeah. Very much so.
I've seen you use it, create textures and literally character concepts and pretty much everything you use.
So
Just through Photoshop. Yeah.
if you guys have ever thought, hey, they modeled that character, I wonder how they got the skin on it. We painted the skin on Photoshop. Basically, we took the face and we pulled it out and pushed it flat. Painted it up and then pushed it back around.
Yes, that's exactly how it's done.
Yeah.
And
They look scary when they're unwrapped.
Yeah, curious fact, if you ever want to see a scary face, just see the unwrapped face of the scout in Team Fortress 2. It is quite horrifying.
Quite terrifying. We had it pinned up on the wall for a while in our lessons.
There's an interesting suite that you can attach on to Photoshop. It's called the Quixel suite, which has both Dedo and Endo, and these are amazing programs at kind of augmenting your texturing prowess. You'll learn about the many different maps and different things you have to create to make something look real purity and be efficient in games, but those two programs can help in a massive way.
Yeah.
And then I know while there's no one here, and I have an extensive background doing like the production side of things, I do know there are people out there who legitimately want to be game producers. They want to be the people who deal with the marketing and talk to the publishers and pitch the games and handle the team, so on and so forth. You guys end up using a handful of software as well, but that's primarily Excel and Word, as well as a lot of like online management systems. And there are a few like actual software kits that kind of come with this, but really like systems like Trello or Asana, Slack. These are a bunch of like very much asset list development and scheduling and distribution kind of mediums.
And there's very much is a big call for people who can manage people very well. I think a team's all brilliant, but essentially, coders and artists are diametrically opposed. We are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you guys speak two very different languages. And I think having a producer on team who's basically, I've always referred to them as cat herders because game developers are cats. The artists want to run off and go make all the things and create all the beauty. The designers very much want to create very complex, very
Yarn balls.
very crazy things. And the programmers want to find the simplest way to do very complex things. So everyone has very different goals. and the producer needs to make sure all the cats are heading the same direction, or else different games are being made.
Yeah.
We've had that experience being in game jams.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
All the cats ran away, and we were like, well, "Hey, where's our herder?"
Yeah. So I think that kind of touches on game development or as that being the third kind of way to get into the industry. On a final aside, I think while we've also discussed the tools required and kind of some of the terms, I think kind of going into game jams and networking events are a phenomenal way to kind of expose yourself to what that is.
Make sure to expose yourself, people, to as many people as you can.
Yeah, game making is a team sport. I think I wouldn't create near the amount of stuff I do now without having an artist or at least someone giving me really cool stuff. I think, yeah, a shape's really cool if it's just placeholder art, but yeah, if you put an animation on there and an actually nice looking model, yeah, no, people start going, ooh, that looks pretty.
And on an aside, at the end of the day, I think, Connor, you touched on something very important there. The game industry, it is a very social industry. Everyone here, I know I myself, even though I have a strong foundation in art, a very strong foundation in design, and I can do a handful of programming, I would never attempt to make a game fully on my own. Because so many of those games, like, realistically, you're not going to be a Notch. You aren't going to be the guy who makes the next cave story or Minecraft. You won't.
Aspire to be if you want, but you may just end up hanging out in a basement with
So many more of those people who attempt to make something solely by themselves end up falling just short and end up with a pile of crap.
Yeah, and the development times for their games are incredibly huge because they're the only people working on it. I think looking at Edward McMillan, I think creator for Super Meat Boy and...
2 people on that project.
Binding of Isaac.
Yeah, 2 people on that. Just 2 people. There's a very small team.
And that still took a very long time to do.
That's another game that's actually still not out, but is getting a lot of props recently, is Overgrowth, which is 2 people on a team. One guy doing code and animation, and the other guy doing art, and it's just insane.
An example of insanely complex game though as well. Everyone go look up Overgrowth and think there are 2 people working on that.
Yep.
Yes.
Look up Super Meat Boy and you can go, yeah, there's 2 people working on that. Overgrowth? No.
Yeah, that is so highly polished. It's amazing.
Yes, so I think we'll go ahead and conclude it here. I think we've touched on some hot topics today.
Can anyone mention, actually, we've mentioned a lot about 3D games, programs which you can build 2D games.
Yes, Photoshop, Illustrator, Flash, Spine.
Yeah.
Game Maker?
Yeah,
Game Maker.
If you don't have a solid, if you're just starting out and you want to actually make games, look up Game Maker as well as Unity as well. Game Maker as well, it has a drag and drop system, so it teaches you very basics of more game related sort of math and game related sort of programming in a more it's a nice
Sheltered way.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it does all the stuff that I think is it's mostly done automatically for you, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So cool. I think we'll go and wrap things up here, but hopefully this has kind of given you all a little insight for how you break into the game industry.
Oh, before we do as well, I think we forgot to mention any audio people as well.
Yes.
I think,
Oh, yeah.
we need
massive...
audio. My God. I don't know how to make music. It's very hard to. I do know a couple of people that do compose music via the Fruity Loop studios that you can get a free demo of, and we need them.
Between Fruity Loops, Audacity, and a few other audio suites.
On Mac, I know there's one GarageBand that comes with the Mac, and apparently it's very highly,
It's definitely a great starting place if nothing else.
For Christ's sake, look what happens when someone gave us a mic. No.
Excellent.
It's incredible. But yeah, never underestimate the power of music. I think a program with very incredible music can just make a very basic experience something magical.
Yes.
So think of any walk 'em up, and it's literally all music.
Yeah.
Go forth and make games, our friends.
Look into game schools, do your damn research. If you're going into QA development, go in with high expectations, but be prepared to have a backup plan and make games in your free times, guys. Go to those game jams.
Make them.
Yeah, just make games, dude.
Make them. Seriously, make them on paper.
Do it now!
Make them with dice.
Make board games as well.
Make them in Excel.
Dog snouts. Mystical majesty.
Brett, you're a bit of a weirdo.
Greyhound snouts. Got a corn cob 'em.
Seriously, man, got an issue.
Have you ever seen pictures of my greyhound? You know what? Send me pictures of your greyhounds, guys.
Don't have a greyhound.
Get them greyhounds. They come in 3 great flavors: Italian, Whippet, and big sized. Just regular greyhounds.
Seriously, stop creepy. We're not pregnant.
Fuck you.
That was very sensual.